We're back. This is Business AM. Talk to us at Metropole TVKE across all your social media platforms. Reginald, good morning. Happy to have you around, sir. Right, now let's therefore focus on the biggest stories that we have for you this morning. Now, the first one being the players in the Kenya's public transport sector have decreed a shortage of face masks a day after the government advised commuters to wear masks in their daily commutes. Now, a number of PSV and border operators have said the available masks are expensive, with one mask now retailing at 200 shillings. Now, the PSV operators now want the government to urgently supply masks across the various termini in order to comply with the latest government directive. This, even as the health seers urged Kenyans to buy masks to enable themselves have extra protection from the virus, which researchers have now indicated can be airborne. The question being, therefore, should the government first have come up with measures of manufacturing cheap masks before issuing this directive? Good. First, before we really tackle this, we're going to get you 2 cents on the curfew that Kenyans now are going through. We don't know whether it's still going to be extended, because what we do know, the numbers have continued to rise even with the curfew in operation. We've seen our economies and neighboring economies start with something that looked like a curfew before they actually went into a total lockdown. Now, a research carried out by InfoTrack just the other week did indicate that 68% of Kenyans feel that the government should call for a total lockdown. And the fact that 75% of Kenyans are totally worried about the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. And just 35% of them say, well, we don't want a lockdown because we do not know exactly what's going to happen to us if you call for total lockdown. Do you believe, therefore, that the curfew that the government did start a couple of days ago help them fight the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, when in reality, every day we get increased numbers?
I think the curfew was more of the government having to show that they are actually doing something, or to test will people actually follow. If they actually institute a lockdown, will people actually listen to it? Because the issue with the curfew, after you've already closed the bars and you've said restaurants cannot have eating, or you cannot sit into a restaurant, you can only do takeaway. In essence, you've already curtailed movement at night, because that was the major thing that people do at night: go to bars to drink, go to clubs to party, or go out to eat dinner. So once you've closed those three, ideally, you've really told guys, don't go anywhere, because there's nothing to do. People will not just walk out randomly just to walk because it's at night. So I think the curfew directive was just activity, but not really progress in terms of slowing this thing down. Because as long as people are still moving between 5 a.m. and 7 p.m., they're actually still spreading it.
Yes.
If they don't adhere to social distancing. So yes, a lockdown is paramount if people don't adhere to the social distancing and other measures that MOH have said to people to do. Because if you are able to go out and keep your 1.5 meters, wear your mask, sanitize, you are generally safe. But the truth of the matter is, our demographics and our culture, is it allowing us to do that? People who stay in Kibera, can they stay 1.5 meters away from each other? People who are walking to work, are they going to walk 1.5 meters away from each other? Even people in matatus, I don't think the distance between one side of matatu to the other side of matatu is actually 1.5 meters. It's not.
Yes.
So you realize, if you realize that now the normal social distancing and the requirements that you want people to stay safe if they continue moving are not practical based on the structure of the society and the infrastructure that we have, then a lockdown becomes paramount.
Yes.
to try and stop that.
Yes.
But I guess also putting a lockdown without a provision on how you're going to either support the vulnerable or feed the vulnerable will also be a drastic mistake.
Yes.
Because I think the situation the government is in right now is it cheaper to treat people or is it cheaper to feed people? In my opinion, I think it is cheaper to feed people than
it is to
treat
people.
Because
Yes.
cost of medicine, cost of getting 500 or 1,000 people in hospitals is more expensive than getting food rations delivered around to people. So it's a choice the government needs to make.
Yes.
But if they don't make it soon enough, then they will have both problems.
Yes.
Because they'll still end up having to put a lockdown and still be actually in a situation where they have to actually treat people double cost.
Yes.
So I think we're at a time where dragging their feet is not going to help them that much. They need to be decisive and then start working on a solution afterwards.
Yes. Now, let's get therefore to the directive that was given just the other day by the Health CS whether now it's important for you to walk around with your mask. In fact, even public service vehicles are also supposed to make sure that they have masks because that's treated like a public area now. But at the end of that, PSVs are telling them, look, the other day you hit us up with fuel costs. We did not get a reprieve in terms of fuel costs. Now, this is another directive where you're telling us, good, you need to have masks. But in reality, they're also saying, well, we don't have these masks that you actually want us to have. So the question, therefore, was, should the government, therefore, said, we are even going to subsidize the costs of masks within the economy so that we enable the members of the public who actually get access to this mask? Because as we do know of it, the longest time that you can actually put on a mask is just 3 hours. After that, it becomes useless. Yes.
The cost of mask is a huge cost.
Yes.
Because these masks are not reusable masks; they are disposable masks. So if you're buying one for 200 and you have to throw it away, means as an individual you have an additional 200 shillings cost every day that you have to go buy a mask. If you look at the people who are still operating or people who are still moving around, are the guys in the informal sector, guys who are going to construction sites, the day house helps, and guys who actually earn daily wages.
Yes.
So if you tell that person to buy a mask for 200 shillings, that's literally telling them to work to buy a mask every other day. If I'm using a matatu and I have to wear a mask, my cost, the matatu cost has already gone up. So I'm paying 100 shillings to travel from where I have to travel and I have to buy a mask. My daily cost has gone up by 300 shillings.
Yes.
So yes, the directive is good. People need to wear masks to better protect yourself. Education on how to use those masks is also key, because most of the people, including some people coming out on TV, are completely wearing the mask completely in the wrong way.
Yes, yes.
And not in the right way. People are handling the masks, because if you have a virus on top of the mask and you keep on adjusting and touching your mask, you've moved the virus from the mask to your hands. Yeah. The time you remove your mask and you touch your face, there's nothing that the mask has actually done.
Yes.
The government, yes, they said they have spoken to the textile industry in Kenya and they are producing 6 million masks.
Yes.
or something of that nature, which will be good. But if they're developing 6 million disposable masks and 3 million are used in a day, that means in 2 days, again, you've run out of masks. The government is not going to give the mask for free. They're saying the mask will retail for 20, 30 shillings. But we know the issue with corruption in this country. I will go buy a box of those masks at 20 shillings, go start reselling them at 100 shillings. So if the government is not going to come and say, we are distributing these masks for free, and we will continually distribute it as long as you're not on a lockdown, then the directive to wear masks is a suggestion that is good on paper, but might be practically, financially not possible to implement.
Yes.
So again, it goes back to the point, which is cheaper for the government, to feed people or to keep on moving people around and now introduce masks, sanitizers, and if they get sick, you have to treat them. I still believe it's cheaper to feed people
Yes.
than to try and treat and prevent people from getting the virus.
Pretty much. I just wanted to hold it up to there because the second issue that we have this morning actually addresses what it is that we're talking about. Now, there are growing calls from Kenyans to the government to cushion them from the harsh economic effects of the new coronavirus pandemic. A number of Kenyans that we spoke to say that measures outlined last week by President Uhuru Kenyatta may not be sufficient to address the growing economic uncertainties that the country is facing. Now, despite many proposals on how the government can go about cushioning the economy from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, there haven't been proposals that seem to please the public question being now for this morning, I mean, where can they begin from, the government, in this respect, and what are the best options for them, especially for the 70% informal economy? Those are the ones that are crying the most. Most people are not happy. Yes, some people say we are scared. That's the 75% of the Kenyan population. We're totally scared. But 68% only are the ones who are saying, well, going to a total lockdown. But 35% are saying, well, if you're going to a lockdown, we are dead. Our livelihoods are totally done. And I want to take you back, and I want to ask you a general question just before we go into the specifics of this. When you look at exactly what the government has done so far in conjunction with the Central Bank of Kenya, is it enough to say that this would hold the economy, when you do know at the back of everybody's mind that our economy, majority of our economy is pretty much informal?
Not really. I think the measures that have been proposed so far are more of elitist measures, which do not address the large part of the population. For example, tax measures on income tax only affect less than 2 million people who are actually salaried, who pay tax to KRA. A majority of the people in the informal sector don't pay any tax, and that's why KRA always misses their target, because they find it hard to tax the informal sector, and they find it even hard to also tax the agricultural sector. So some of the measures that were done, yes, might be good for people who are employed, and not everyone who's employed is employed at a certain level, because even if you look at the VAT reduction that took place, I think the government should have sat down and looked at where can we actually reduce taxation, which has ripple or multiple effects. If you remove the 8% VAT on fuel, you've already affected, one, the cost of electricity. You've affected the cost of production. Automatically makes producing the goods cheaper. You've reduced cost of transportation. I've mentioned you've reduced cost of electricity, so it means also household consumption, expenditure on electricity also reduces. So removing the 8% on VAT on fuel will have had more ripple effects than reducing VAT by 2%. So as a government, they need to start looking at what are the things that touch across sectors that if we do will actually make a change. But as the changes that we have done, especially monetary policy changes, they have a lag. One, there's recognition lag, and we're clearly seeing it. They took time to realize that there's going to be a problem. There's going to be implementation lag. If you look at, are people actually getting loans to be coming out? No, loans are not going out. And there's now then the impact lag. And normally even if you increase money supply in the economy, you might have some immediate impact, but the full impact is felt way down the line. So the measures that were put, one, are a bit elitist. Two, will not have an immediate impact. And most of them looked at the demand side. That's why they are reducing to try and get people to get more disposable income. But if I get more income and have nothing to buy, you've not addressed the supply side, then you will find that then the measures are actually half-baked measures. They actually don't affect the whole economy as a whole.
Now, I want to ask you this as well, because the biggest ones that we saw is the CBK, Central Bank Governor, Dr. Patrick Njoroge, just threw us to the banks. I mean, even the money that he said that's going to look just to cushion the economy from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, he actually did say that, well, we're going to give these banks extra money that they're going to hold so they can lend back to the economy at cheaper rates now, which we do know now stand at 7.25%. Fine. But is it okay, therefore? Can we start to figure an economic stimulus package that works? And I want to ask you this morning, Reginald. We do have businesses that are registered. The government keeps on saying, well, for the hotel industry and the tourism sector, they are going to get heavily hit. But up to now, we haven't found any economic stimulus package for this industry and this sector as well. Now, we do have other registered businesses in the services industry. We haven't seen. KQ the other day is going to go back to the government to help them get out of this rubble that they find themselves into now. And we do know, because it's a government entity, they're going to get that. I mean, they've been receiving loans from the government, latest one being the 5 billion. But now questions are therefore, is that if you're telling us to close these businesses, if you're telling us you're not going to get visitors coming in for the next 30 days as well, over the other side as well, can't you talk about a direct package? Now, for these hotels that we've closed, for these hotels that have applied for diminished incomes and bottom lines, this is exactly what we're going to do for you for the next few months. Is that what we need to look at right now, instead of approaching it from the banking sector perspective? Well, the banks have money, we're going to borrow money and then give it to the banks. After all this, you can be able to get these monies. Is that what we should be talking about right now?
For monetary policy,
yes.
You mentioned the rate of 7.5%. But one thing that people need to understand, which I don't know whether central bank itself even understand this, that them mentioning a rate is indicative of where they think the economy is going to go.
Yes.
So it becomes as an indicator of people, businesses know that, okay, if these guys have reduced rates, they're expecting that the economy is going to become weak, so it needs to be stimulated. It's not a rate that we should actually follow. It's just for communication purposes.
Yes.
The move of the central bank flooding the banks with money. The question was that, are they saying the crisis is going to bring issues of liquidity into the banking sector?
Yes.
Because quantitative easing or growth in money supply is to try and make sure that in the short term you sort out any liquidity problems that the banks will have or the economy will have. And the economy doesn't have liquidity problems. The banks have a lot of money which they have been lending back to the government, because the government has been having a crowding out effect on the private sector. So I don't think that the measures of the monetary policy will actually help the economy right now. Yes, the banks will have quite a lot of money. Interbank rate will move around 4%, 3%, meaning that they are sufficiently liquid, and it has been there even before CRR was reduced.
Yes.
As you mentioned, companies are closing down. Airline industries, tourism, even the agricultural sector is all suffering. Does the government have capacity to give stimulus packages to all these guys? I do not think so. They actually have to be a bit smart in what they do. Yes. Currently, what you want to do is, you do not want output to ground to a halt. Yeah, because if output now grounds to a halt, then even the 3% of GDP they're talking about becomes a fallacy. Yes. You'll actually expect GDP to actually contract. Yes. So the government needs to come in and play a role as the largest demand component in the economy right now. So if you put people on lockdown, what is happening to the economy is that income for people is suffering. Income for businesses is suffering. When income suffers or income reduces, that means aggregate demand in the economy is reducing. And if there's no demand, then also supply will start reducing. And these guys who you are providing loans for will start laying off people. If my factory is operating only at 30% capacity, I will lay off people and actually create a multiplier effect in a problem that we currently have, that we now have unemployment increasing. So the government needs to come in between now the supply side and the demand side. Since the demand side, if you want to put it on lockdown, you're killing the demand side. There's no way you can say, I've reduced your tax, so go buy more. Those guys are on lockdown. They're not going to go and buy. And it is in a crisis, people reduce spending. They save just in case they don't know how long it's going to take. So you find consumption actually reduces. Yes. So if the government comes in and says, okay, you 5-10 industries produce cooking oil, you produce maize, you produce whatever, that's what you do on a daily basis. We will buy those things and distribute to the informal sector. That way, what you have done, you have kept industries running because they still have an output, someone who is buying from them. Yes. Then the government can say, but we will not buy with VAT, so we have removed VAT, but we'll buy all the produce that you produce. What the government now does, by doing that, the manufacturer of unga still wants to go buy maize from the farmer because there's someone who's still buying unga. But if there's no one buying unga, the manufacturer of unga is not going to buy maize from the farmer ends up with rotting maize, and you create another crisis that side. So if you want to keep that supply chain open, the government now needs to become the largest purchaser. Yes. For the purposes of redistributing that food to the informal sector after you put them on lockdown. I think that's the only option the government actually has. Yes. By doing that, you also make sure that you don't increase your fiscal deficit more. So non-priority thing. Right now, we don't need roads. Right now, we don't need all these other projects that had been allocated money. We're not in a crisis. Defense doesn't need to buy new tanks and new missiles. So, because the danger is, if you keep the allocations in the budget the same way they are, and also try to handle COVID in the same place, you're going to increase your budget deficit.
Yes.
And the only way you cover a deficit is through taxation and through borrowing. Then we now expect taxation to increase in the future, and the recession now kicks in properly. So the government needs to be that middle buyer,
Yes.
The largest aggregate buyer in the economy currently, for them to save the economy.
And that's where the point is. And the next question now, for after we come from the break, Reginald, is that yes, CBK governor says that yes, they have a very good chest to take us out of this. But quote unquote, it did say, we don't want to use it right now. I mean, we don't want to take out all our arsenal right now. He said that yes, we are capable. The only thing that he did say is that in the long run, our GDP, the best they say it is going to around 3.4%. So once we come back, the question is, are we not at that point where we say, let's take out our arsenal? Because as we do know, our economy is a consumer economy. And if we're not getting that much, then our production levels here cannot sustain us in the long run. Once we come back, get involved. 21146 is your SMS line.